I think I want to say like 41 and 42 cents, and maybe once a month. I love that noise.
Warning. The political trade features probabilities and perspectives about politicians, political parties, political outcomes, and political wagering. The political trade is rated NSFP, not safe for partisans.
The number one biggest game is with the kingdom of fame. It's like a race to the top because they want to be boss. They don't care who they step on as long as they get along. Politicians in my eyes.
Well, welcome back to The Political Trade, the podcast for people with a passion for politics, probability, and profits. I'm Jeff Joseph, editorial director of Luckbox magazine, hosting the podcast where conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats, partisans and wingnuts all converge to make money betting on politics by trading in the prediction markets at predictit.org, the stock market for politics that trades 24/7. Joining us on the show today is the editor-in-chief of Star Spangled Gamblers blog and host of the Star Spangled Gamblers podcast. He is known to Predicted traders as Keendawg. We're happy to host our friend, Alex Keeney. Up ahead, Alex is going to share one of his favorite trading tactics. He's going to follow that up with several specific trades that he's wagering on today in the prediction markets. So to get the most out of this podcast, open up predictit.org, click on the Markets tab, which is top left, follow along, and leave your political ideologies at the door. As always, I'm joined by Mike Reddy. Mike is an editor at Luckbox magazine, a new prediction market trader, and the producer of The Political Trade. Mike, it's nice to have Alex today. How are you?
Good, Jeff, and you're right, it sure is. And worth noting, this won't be the first time that we've spoken with Alex. We actually featured him in the first ever Luckbox story that we wrote about prediction markets way back in the November Betting on the Future issue.
As I recall that story, which you worked on when we started, and since then we've had a story on the prediction markets in every issue of Luckbox magazine. But what stood out was not only some of the insights that Alex shared with us, but we also asked him for 3 specific predictions in that issue, as we do in every issue. And how did he do on his 3 predictions?
Well, they were all winners. People who followed Alex's advice and took advantage of those trades made a little bit of money.
That's nice to hear. I recall as well. It was a loaded question. I know Alex was 3 for 3. Alex has been a good friend of this podcast from day one. He gave us a lot of help and advice in the early days of setting this up and how we would put it together, because he has a podcast as well called Star Spangled Gamblers, which speaks to a lot of the active traders in the market. In fact, Alex, are you out there? Can you join us?
I'm out here. It's a little foggy on the West Coast, but it's good to hear your voice, Jeff and Mike.
It's foggy and early, and it's good to have you on as well. So thanks again. So that's true. So you are regularly joined by Trader Zoltar and
Yeah, he's my boy.
Pratik Shoguli at starspangled.gamblers.com and your podcast. And we have a lot of news to cover today, so we actually want to jump right into it. So it's early out on the West Coast, but this morning we woke up to Justin Amash jumping into the market. I don't know if you're aware of that, but that jumped up immediately. It's trading at 96 cents right now, and that was, it was about a 50-50 proposition only a couple days ago. In Predicted, the market is, will Amash run for president before 6/1? And it was a kind of an even money bet. When we had James Carville on, we asked him what he thought the probability was. And his remark was he thinks he would do it if he thought it would take votes away from Trump. But that seems to be the big question right now. Amash is coming under some pretty heavy criticism this morning because of his decision.
You've got me on this podcast, and there's a list of things that we're going to talk about. But I like to sometimes, when I think about these questions, I like to play the man and not play the numbers, which gets me in trouble with a lot of really great traders. But Amash had a long history of maybe being a little bit egotistical, a little bit contrarian, and maybe even a little bit of a showboat. So I don't know how surprising it is to see that he would, run for president with that sort of revolutionary zeal to promote his ideas and his worldview. I myself missed out on that because I'm a weenie, though.
Well, Justin Amash is, of course, the Republican out of Michigan who will be running as a Libertarian. He's been a vocal critic of Trump and left the Republican Party after becoming the first Republican to vote in favor of impeachment. He's represented Michigan's 3rd district in the U.S. since 2011, and he quit the Republican Party in July of 2019 after clashing with Trump. Um, I guess the question here right now is the wisdom of his candidacy. Joe Walsh, the former Illinois, well, and not the Joe Walsh, but the other Joe Walsh, the former Illinois representative who had a short GOP
very
presidential
memeable
bid.
candidate.
That's right. He said, and I quote, "I think it's absolute bullshit what he's doing. This is not the fucking year to do any kind of third party run." So already he's coming under a little criticism from both the left and the right. What's your thinking on that? That he will actually draw votes away from Biden as opposed to net votes away from Trump?
I was talking about this on one of our recent Star Spangled Gamblers podcasts, and first of all, I don't know the answer to that. And second of all, I mean, I think that there are probably in states like New York and California, there's probably also a lot of, call them Clinton Republicans. Once upon a time, they were Reagan Democrats who vote for libertarians just because they don't want to vote for mainstream candidates. I don't, the numbers I won't weigh in on. I just view Justin Amash as being kind of a Bernie Sanders, Ron Paul type candidate who just wants his ideas and his worldview to be promoted and doesn't really care about the rest.
Well, the rumor has it he thinks he can win.
I didn't want to run unless I felt I could win, and I do feel I can win this race. I don't want to run to be a spoiler, never wanted to run to be a spoiler, wanted to run to win the presidency. And I feel like there is a good chance of doing that with this field.
So he thinks he can win. The spoiler controversy will certainly bubble up. I mean, it takes us back to the 2000 presidential election with Bush running against Gore. But of course, Nader was a part of that race and is often considered the spoiler. I mean, the final vote tally, of course, was that Bush had 47.87% of the vote and Gore had 48.38. So he actually won the popular vote, as we all know. But Ralph Nader with Winona LaDuke, his running mate, put together 2.74%. And that was critical in the state of Florida, which was the swing state that of course, it took a Supreme Court ruling, but that ultimately tipped the Electoral College over to Bush. And the math suggests that the 2% of the votes that Nader took in Florida was more than enough to offset the 436 vote total that Bush ended up beating Gore by. So the spoiler tag is stuck with Nader on the 2000 election. And of course, that's what we're hearing again. Well, what's interesting about third-party candidates is, they're really in it for the 5%. So I think there's a realistic view that among the voters, maybe not the candidates, if Amash is deceiving himself that he has any chance of winning, that goes without saying. But most of the voters, and I know I voted for Nader because of their interest in seeing a third party receive federal funding, and that's the 5% threshold level that's been so critical for that. So if any third party ever hits 5%, they receive federal funding, which is somewhat legitimizes that party going forward. And we saw in the 2000 election, there were states like Montana, Hawaii, and Minnesota, and the eastern states like Maine and Massachusetts and Vermont, Rhode Island, that had 4, 5, 6% of the vote. So I guess the big question is, where will this make a difference here? Is there a swing state that will make a difference with Amash perhaps peeling off some votes from both Biden and Trump?
I mean, I think that the place where it makes the biggest difference is Justin Amash's ego. I am of the view, I think about political trading very qualitatively and not quantitatively. I don't pretend to really know how this election is going to go. I just think that Justin Amash knows he's going to lose his House seat in November and is looking for something to do. I think that you have to tell donors that you think you can win a race, because who's going to give you money to fund your race if you say, hey, I know I'm a loser, but we've got some important ideas. And I am at this moment skeptical about what, if any, bearing his candidacy is going to have on this election. But, if we talk in 3 months and he's raising money and people are listening to him and he's actually getting booked consistently on cable news as a candidate, if he's making debate thresholds to, share the stage the way Ross Perot did in the 92 race with Bush and Clinton, then we could be looking at a serious spoiler. But my brain is very much in short-term thinking right now. And in the short term, I feel like Justin Amash just knows he's going to lose his congressional race and is looking for something to do.
I think that's also consistent with a bigger picture approach that you take, which is really why we wanted to have you on this episode. With all the news swinging around, you can kind of lift us above the news a little bit, because I've recently heard you expound on a concept that that essentially notes that pricing dislocations and distortions result from the biases that are inherent to the predicted audience demographic, and they're subsequently creating exploitable mispricing opportunities. And I know you're focused on the demographics of the traders, and you look for opportunities there. But can you give me examples of that? I know that your thinking is that the demographic of predicted's audience has created some mispricing opportunities. What would be examples of that?
So I've been out there, trying to be the voice of political gamblers, and here I am insulting my audience, talking about how they're, all white men under 40, living in big cities, making a good living. Like they sort of tend to be cut from the same mold, and those types of people tend to have similar biases. They love, there are candidates like when Andrew Yang popped to 13 cents for the Democratic nomination. I don't think he ever polled above 1 or 2% in a state. I mean, the extent to which predicted traders have constantly underestimated Joe Biden, whose appeal seems to be to minorities and working people. There's a long and extensive list of bias manipulating prices unintentionally. We'll say it that way.
And that speaks a little bit to the audience. We had John Phillips, the CEO of Aristotle, the political technology firm that provides the engine for the predicted platform. And we asked him specifically a couple of episodes back about the predicted audience. And this is what he said.
The age range is generally people in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s. It's skewed male. There are more than the fair share of day traders, and the average first-time deposit's about $200.
How often do you see these opportunities to exploit as a result of biases inherent to this white male trader demographic?
It's like anything. You're sitting in the bathtub and then the water rises and you say, Eureka, and something that should have been obvious is suddenly, it hits you like a ton of bricks. And so you can see these biases come and go, but just the way that Bernie Sanders, these personality candidates were a large upswelling of traders kind of betting their political sex fantasies, whether it was Sanders or Yang prices being propped up during the election or Biden's prices being depressed. And then once you kind of get clued into it, these things will come and go. But as long as they're there, you really need to attack them consistently and in a concentrated way.
Well, there's a lot of news to walk through, so let's move on a little bit and talk about it. Now, first of all, you also woke up to a really passionate endorsement that Hillary Clinton lobbed over towards Joe Biden. The energy and the enthusiasm and the charisma that comes from these two was a little overwhelming. Mike, can you share that with us?
Welcome, Hillary. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and to be part of this very important discussion. And I am thrilled to be part of your campaign to not only endorse you, but to help highlight a lot of the issues that are at stake.
Now, Alex, you analyze speech, and I know that's a big part of what you do. What do you bring home from that?
This is just the machine running. And that's what we'll see, I think, in the Biden campaign. Joe Biden is never going to have Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump amphitheaters full of people screaming their lungs out for him. But he is going to have the dedicated party servants, Hillary Clinton being the highest power, and people in local wards and get out the vote groups, like they'll all run the machine for him, and that has a place too.
They are coming out. In fact, there's a lot of people coming out of the woodwork, not just Hillary and not just Justin Amash. Jesse Ventura is reemerging also. He came out yesterday saying that he's considering a Green candidacy run. Of course, Jesse is the former one-term governor of Minnesota back in 1999 to 2003. He at one point he had a 70% approval rating in the state, but when he left office, he ran up some significant debt and also left office with about a 40% approval rate, but he is threatening to run as a Green Party candidate.
Yeah, don't sleep on Minnesota. They produce some good candidates there. If you just think about the last 20 years, whether it's Klobuchar now or Tim Pawlenty before her, Norm, what's his face? Who was it that got Me Too'd for the picture of him?
Franken.
Pretending
Al Franken.
Al Franken. He beat Norm Coleman. Don't sleep on Minnesota. I don't think Jesse Ventura is going to be president, but I think it's worth noting that state produces some pretty strong contenders.
So that's Venture, Jesse Ventura, Justin Amash. Is there anybody else on the horizon as another third-party candidate that might have any impact in terms of votes?
I mean, listen, will someone else file to be president? It seems like everyone in America is running for president these days. Does anything rise above the radar screen and trip a threat detector, launch the missiles? No, not really. I'm not. It does not factor into my thinking, but I'm wrong about stuff a lot. That's part of being a good trader, is admitting that you're wrong. So maybe Oprah will run. Who knows?
Well, I think the biggest story that perhaps has gotten the least amount of media attention, but potentially will have some impact, is the sexual abuse allegations lobbed by Tara Reade, former staffer on the Biden campaign a couple decades ago, against Joe Biden. It's interesting because you can't look at this objectively or nonpartisanly and not feel as though that the media has taken a decidedly different approach to this than they did on the Kavanaugh story. It does play very well into the story that the mainstream media might be holding water for the Biden campaign. What's your takeaway on this?
I mean, do I think it's hilarious? I'm talking about the media's portrayal of it and not the reality that maybe sexual abuse happened. Yeah, I think it's I just die laughing every time I see the side-by-sides of the same reporters and the same Democratic politicians going from believe all women to, well, there's some inconsistencies in the story. But at the end of the day, I think that inconsistencies are kind of what makes politics interesting and exciting, because it's a game of power, and preserving and using power requires compromising on principles. So I'm not surprised. And I don't think it's going to derail Joe Biden from winning the Democratic nomination. That to me seems pretty outlandish too.
It did have a little bit of impact. He traded from the low 80s down into the high 70s on the Democratic nomination, but it's really hard to imagine. Plus, the party seems to be consolidating around him. Mike, you have a clip on Stacey Abrams coming out and supporting Joe.
I believe that women deserve to be heard, and I believe that they need to be listened to. But I also believe that those allegations have to be investigated by credible sources. The New York Times did a deep investigation, and they found that the accusation was not credible. I believe Joe Biden.
When you speak to the side-by-side comparisons, let's go back to the Kavanaugh hearings and listen to what Kamala Harris had to say.
This is going to be funny.
But I believe her. Listen, first of all, anybody who comes forward at this point to be prepared to testify in the United States Senate against someone who's being nominated to one of the most powerful positions in the United States government, that takes an extraordinary amount of courage.
Do you think that negates her? I know you've been pretty vocal, and I share your opinion completely that Kamala Harris will not get the VP nomination, that she will not be Biden's pick. Yet she's a front runner in the predicted markets, trading at 29 cents as we speak, and has been the front runner for the last several months, trading in the high 20s or low 30s. What the New York Magazine story referred to as the Biden trap was, and I quote from the story, whichever woman gets a nod to be his running mate will wind up drinking from a poisoned chalice, because the promise to choose a woman ensures that whoever she is, she'll be forced to answer over and over again for Biden's treatment of other women, including the serious allegations of assault leveled by Tara Reade. And then specifically, you have Kamala Harris, whose hypocrisy will be front and center if she's chosen as a running mate. What do you think that does to her chances?
I mean, I'll stay general, and we can go more specific as we need to. But I said earlier in this podcast that when we talk about questions like this that are more qualitative in nature, that I like to play the man. I don't like to play the numbers. I think that predicted traders and the people in the media are very fixated on the concept of identity, because just in our culture, that's something that we're fixated on right now. And I think that that's pushing, they're also fixated on James Clyburn in South Carolina saying that he wants a black woman to be the vice presidential pick. But at the end of the day, I think that Joe Biden was one of the most powerful vice presidents in history. I think he has an extraordinary amount of respect for that position. I think he's a very emotional person. John Boehner's the only public figure I can think of who cries more often than Joe Biden. So I think he wants to pick someone he likes. I don't think he likes Kamala Harris. I think that he wants to pick someone who he believes he can hand the country off to on day one, because he's old and he knows he's old and he knows that, things could go the wrong way for him. So to me, that signals not Kamala. Kamala Harris is sort of a nakedly political person, and I don't view his calculation as being nakedly political.
Yeah, I share that sentiment explicitly. You articulated exactly how I feel. I think if you play that out a little bit, it bodes well for Amy Klobuchar as a front runner. But the general theme that Biden just doesn't like Harris, and I think that's likely the way that plays out.
I mean, but Jeff, there's like no excuse to lose money in this marketplace because there's so much volatility and so much liquidity in it, though. Like, you should, if you're betting on the vice president, like, I think buy and hold is absolutely the wrong way to do it. I mean, just go to your candle chart, look at the highs and lows, and trade all of the candidates. Just land on someone good.
I agree with you. In fact, we had a British trader on, professional gambler, and he focuses on cricket, snooker, golf, and politics. That's how he makes his living. And his strategy that he spoke to in the VP nominee category was trade to the short list first. Don't try to pick a winner. Just identify the 3 or 4 names that are going to make it to the next round. And yeah, I think there's a lot of good
I don't want to
advice
get
in
caught with some fringe candidate like Val Demings, with like 1,000 shares of her at 3%, trying to sell them for like 5. I want to trade candidates who can actually win.
I think that sets us up. We really want to, because I know you have a lot of specific markets that you want to discuss and some of your best bets within those markets, but we want to set that against the backdrop of a broader investment tactic that you want to share with us. So we're going to get to that. We're going to be right back after a short break. We're back with the tactics segment of the political trade. Alex Keeney is our special guest. And Alex, take us to school. I know you have a broader theme here that you want to share with us about how you approach these markets. And it's a little bit more thematic. So we look forward to hearing that.
I think that, look, today we'll talk about this and how it applies to a couple broad markets, but just file it in the back of your head, because I think if you're willing to kind of fade the fad, and that might be a fad in the news media, it might be a fad in predicted pricing, I think you can consistently win. And it's broadly applicable to a lot of different marketplaces. And, we are in a presidential election, so I think we're going to focus a little bit on that right now. But, whatever the herd mentality is probably blind to some other forces. And there's usually a way to make money by just being aware of that.
Could you build that out a little bit more for us?
Yeah. So at the top of this podcast, I've sort of been hinting at this, but predicted traders, for whatever reason, just don't like Joe Biden. And my reasons for, my guess as to why is that they're just demographically different from them. But there's sort of, I don't want to call them a silent majority. There's also sort of like a silent plurality of kind of MAGA hat super Trump guys who want to bet $100 on Donald Trump to win everything. And I don't think they play in a lot of other markets. I think they just want to bet on Trump to win. So I think the Joe Biden prices are just consistently depressed because, one, people who have liberal biases on predicted would rather Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders be the nominee. And two, the people with conservative biases really want to express the fact that they think Joe Biden has dementia. So wherever his name shows up, there's the best example is the price for betting that Joe Biden will win the presidency is, call it, between 40 and 45 cents on any given day. The price for the Democrats winning the presidency is between 50 and 55 cents on any given day. So people just hate Joe Biden on predicted. And I don't think that there's a rational explanation for it.
Let me interrupt that just for a moment, because I really want to highlight that, because what you're pointing out is a price dislocation that is just calling out for being exploited. It's the same thing that Paul Krishnamurti, who was our British trader on last week, brought attention to. And you're doing the same thing. You're saying this makes no sense when you have two parallel markets to have such a wide disparity between the pricing of what is essentially the same outcome. That 10-cent spread, it's hard to imagine that it speaks to anything but what you're identifying as an underlying bias by predicted traders against Joe Biden.
I agree. And you can multiply that bet across the board. I apologize if this is something that a prior guest has said, but Predicted has markets that reflect that. Will the Texas primary winner win the nomination? Will the South Carolina primary, New Hampshire, Iowa, California? So, implied in that also is if you get over levered against like a black swan of, Biden getting struck by lightning or actually turning out to be a real Harvey Weinstein, there's ways to hedge that. I think it's a little expensive to hedge right now. And I think it's a little unrealistic to think that there's a 20% chance that Biden's going to die or get Weinsteined. So, but it's there. If you're feeling over levered, there are plenty of hedging opportunities.
So fade the fad. It reminds me of back in the 1990s during the dot-com era, when former Fed Chairman Al Greenspan used to speak to irrational exuberance in the market, which he basically referred to as the bubble that was created by fandom investing as opposed to more rational investing. And when I refer to the prior guest, he only acknowledged the discrepancy. You actually explained it, and I think that becomes an actionable theme for listeners is that they can look for this to be repeated.
Can I do you one better on this tactic though?
Please.
And maybe we can file this under trades too. A lot of these markets for Senate races, for presidential races, for candidate-specific races offer two brackets. They offer a will the Republicans win and will a Democrat win bracket. So one thing I like to do when the pricing is right, like for example, Mitch McConnell's Senate campaign attracts a lot of Democratic partisans, I think, betting against him. I think people see his name. They're like, I hate that guy. I want to bet against him. So you can bet long on what you think the winner will be. I think Mitch McConnell will wind up winning that race. But you can also trade the other bracket as a short and flip shares, as the partisan money comes and goes on the short side of that trade, and just, keep the money coming in while you wait for the inevitable conclusion of the race to occur. So keep that in mind when you see these races that have two brackets on them.
Oh, that's a good point. And in the Mitch McConnell is only trading at 80 cents right now. In which party will win the U.S. Senate election in Kentucky in 2020, when every indication is that they walk away with that. And you think, again, that's a result of this inherent bias against McConnell in the same way that there's a bias against Biden.
Yeah, and frankly, just that some of these Senate races are a little low volume right now. So I was able to buy a couple hundred shares of him losing at, I think, an average cost of 11 cents. And I'm dying to, get in there and buy that again. But, low liquidity can help you too. You got to set those buy orders when they're on your mind, because when those shares become available, someone else will snatch them up if you're not already in line.
Well, that's what we're going to get prepared to do. We're going to come back right after a short break, and we're going to ask you to tell us where to look for some buy orders to place. And so we'll be right back. But first,
want a little more luck in your life? Get Luckbox, the control freak's guide to life, money, and probability. Named the best new magazine of 2019. Luckbox is a must-read for side hustlers, gamblers, entrepreneurs, and active investors. Each issue features best bets from prediction market experts, as well as timely sports wagering, stocks, options, futures, and cryptocurrency trading ideas. You can buy Luckbox on newsstands, but with this special offer, listeners of The Political Trade can receive a 10-issue digital subscription absolutely free. Just visit getluckbox.com to receive the award-winning magazine right in your inbox. Don't rely on luck. Get Luckbox for free today. Learn more at getluckbox.com.
Well, welcome back to The Political Trade with Alex Keendawg Keeney, and we want to jump right into his top trades on Predicted right now. Alex, what's the first market that we should pull up?
Yeah, so I feel like I've teased this, but I think that will Biden win the nomination, and will any state that has a primary market, Texas, South Carolina, come to mind. the winner of that primary, who is Joe Biden, be the nominee? Like, those are easy yes buys. Just take the money, take the money, take the money.
Joe Biden currently at 81 cents. It is an easy yes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think there'll be much variance as a result of Tara Reade in this story that allows you to buy it at a lower level? Or do you think this is basically a free 25% return here?
Look, you're identifying the weakness of this trade, which is I don't think that Biden to be the nominee will trade above 90 cents until 24 hours before he accepts it from his basement in Delaware, beaming into the Wisconsin convention. That's actually not an endorsement of the market. Will the convention actually happen? But I'm sort of eyeing that right now too, because of Tara Reade, because of people's suspicion about Biden's physical fitness. I think that market will not pay out anytime soon. So it is kind of a bummer to have your money sitting there. And it might go lower in the meantime. I think that is reasonable to expect.
And you mentioned Texas. So in the Texas market, and that market is, will the 2020 Texas Democratic primary winner win the nomination? A yes is currently 85 cents for the Texas Democratic primary winner to win.
I mean, I think these are all the exact same bets. These are, will Biden win the nomination? I think there's another one in South Carolina. And, if you get a little... if you're getting a little squirrely, if you think that you've got too much leverage out there on Joe Biden, again, you can take no on these, or you can do something really bold, which is go over to the state of California and bet that the California Democratic primary winner might be the nominee, and that would be Bernie Sanders. I think you can pick him up for like 2 cents to be the nominee. So there's sort of creative ways to make money on chaos. If you think chaos is coming, but I don't think chaos is coming.
Right. So both of the markets you identified, Texas and South Carolina, in both instances, the yes is 85 cents. And Biden, of course, won the South Carolina primary easily with 48% of the vote. So those do look like easy money and an extension of the same theme.
Now, I think you can also bet on Trump's and Biden's coattails too. And these are the markets about who will control the House and who will control the Senate. And in my opinion, traders are starting to catch up to this. But the most underpriced market on Predicted is the will Dems win the House of Representatives market. And that has been trading between 70 and I think 78 cents over the last month. I have seen no evidence whatsoever that Republicans are going to flip any meaningful number of districts. It seems like the losing tactics that they used in the 2018 election and the sort of anti-Trump shift in the suburbs of big cities, Orange County, outside Dallas, outside Houston, the north side of Chicago, where you guys are. I see no evidence that Republicans are recruiting good candidates, that they're raising money, and that they're going to win back these seats. So to me, that should be a 99-1 market. And right now it's sitting at 70-30.
And that is which party will control the House after the 2020 election?
The Democrats, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you think about the return here, and I think this is what investors may recognize and shorter term traders perhaps lose sight of from time to time. But if you're looking at a current price of 79 cents is the yes price for Democrats to retain control of the House. So you're picking up 21 cents. That's about a 27% return from now until November over 6 months. That annualizes over 50%. These are really good trades. If you think like a longer term investor, there is as attractive as they could be, a 50% plus return on a high probability outcome. I don't think there's any scenario with Democrats currently with 232 seats in the House and Republicans at 196. I don't think any scenario has been complicated or contemplated whereby they don't retain control of the House.
And I do think, like, I'm not someone who thinks that this election's already decided. I'm not someone, I think Joe Biden's the favorite. There are a lot of people on Predicted in the media who think he's like an 80-20 favorite. I don't feel that way. But it's pretty unlikely to me that, once again, these suburban voters, educated voters, female voters that delivered the last election to the Democrats have changed their mind in the last two years. And furthermore, that's why I think that Joe Biden will just opt to recreate that coalition rather than, leaning into the progressive or sort of diversity forward coalition that a lot of people on Predicted think he'll choose.
So at the very least, there's a spread opportunity if which party will win the 2020 presidential election. Democrats are a yes at 54 cents, yet Biden is only a yes to win at 44 cents against Trump. There's a 10 cent spread there that is just laying on the table to be picked up. So it's an arbitrage play, basically. How would you best capture that spread, that 10%, that 10-cent pricing differential?
I mean, I guess I don't really need to capture that unless I want to put $1,700 in a lockbox for the next couple months.
And that's because of the 850 cap per trade. So that's the
Right.
1,700 you're referring to.
I think your cheaper market, though, I've basically put in buy orders for Joe Biden to win the presidential election at, I think I want to say like 41 and 42 cents, and maybe once a month. I love that noise. I like cha-ching
right?
even more.
Yeah. We just want to make sure you ring that bell a couple of times. So
Let's do it.
Do you ever see opportunities to get that pricing again, though?
Like I said, you get those buy orders in, and for the 5 minutes those shares are available, sometimes it's your turn to buy them. So, I'll pick up a small number of shares down in the low 40s, and I've just been accumulating them, but I want to sell them once the market I think it will at least get to 50-50. I think there's a lot of those. I described demographically that there are a lot of people who just want to come in and bet $100 on Trump to win, and that's really depressing prices on Joe Biden's odds. And I don't think that that's going to change dramatically in the near term. But when that market hits 50-50, I want to unload a lot of these shares and make a quick profit, and then inevitably wait for it to fall back down into the 40s and buy in again.
Well, I knew we would get you to ring the bell 3 times here at least. And of course, you're ringing the bell frequently with your blog at starspangledgamblers.com and your Star Spangled Gamblers podcast, where you're regularly sharing some of your insights and some of your trades along with your co-hosts and guests. So we want to make sure that our listeners have that same opportunity. If you are not currently trading on Predicted, remember, it's easy to take advantage of some of these trade opportunities that are brought up in every episode. And all you have to do is sign up on Predicted. You can take advantage of these tactics, these trades, by going to predicted.org/promo/TPT20. Sign up, deposit $20, and we'll match the first $20 you deposited. That's predicted.org/promo/TPT20. Deposit $20. You'll have 40 to trade with. It's that simple. Don't just listen to the political trade. You can sign up and trade along. So we're going to take one last quick break, but when we come back, we're going to share this week's Luck Box of the Week. It's kind of a surprise. So we'll be right back. And we're back. As you know, each week we typically wrap an episode by declaring the Luck Box of the Week. A Luck Box is the undeserving recipient of a favorable outlier outcome. It's also the name of our award-winning magazine, Luckbox Magazine. And we announced a special promotion last week. Mike, you want to remind the listeners what that promotion was?
Yeah, of course. Worth noting, this promotion is still going on, so you can take advantage of this opportunity if you're listening to this episode as well. Essentially, what we're asking is that listeners of The Political Trade go to their favorite podcast platforms, be it Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever, and write us a review. You write a review, send us a screenshot of that review to let us know that you wrote it and submit it. And we will send you a complimentary print issue of Luckbox Magazine. Now, that's typically a $7.99 value on newsstands, and there are no strings attached. We won't be sending you emails. It's absolutely free.
Well, we had a number of takers to that promotional offer last week, and we decided we would go one step further by randomly selecting one of those reviews that came in. And thank you for all that did that. And give that lucky random recipient one free 10-issue subscription to Luckbox Magazine. So our Luckbox of the week is Dan Muskowitz. He's a listener from San Francisco, California. Dan, we have your mailing address, and we are going to send you the next 10 issues of Luckbox Magazine for free. So congratulations, Dan. You're our Luckbox of the week. And Mike, can you remind again how other listeners can take advantage of this?
Yeah, so all you have to do is, once again, write a review, send us a screenshot to tpt@luckboxmagazine.com with your address, and we'll be sure to send out one of those issues ASAP.
Well, Alex, this was a lot of fun. We've been looking forward to having you on for quite a while. And of course, you can listen to Alex at Star Spangled Gamblers Podcast. You can look him up on starspangledgamblers.com, his website, and find him on social media in the same way. Alex, any parting thoughts for new traders out there or for the predicted ecosystem in general?
Yeah, so this is the most controversial thing I'm gonna say, and that is just don't be a dick. Like, there's a lot of paranoia in the world of gambling. I get it, but like, if you put good information out there, if you're cool with people, if you trust them, the best information that I get is from fellow traders. Share information, make friends, trade with people together. I'm a good trader. There are great traders who will be your friend. Be friends with them, and your level of play will rise significantly.
I don't recall that chapter in the investment classic, Education of a Speculator. I must have missed the Don't Be a Dick chapter. So, Alex, once again, it's great having you with us. I hope you're staying safe out in California.
It's been great being on this show. It's always great to hear your voice, Jeff.
And to everybody else, thanks for tuning into The Political Trade. Be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts so you can take advantage of any trends, tactics, trades shared by our super trader guests. This is Jeff Joseph.
And I'm Mike Reddy.
Remember to wash your hands, social distance, stay safe, stay healthy, and join us next week on The Political Trade.